the golden period. In nearly every interaction that you will have with a narcissist, you will experience some form of the golden period. There's a very small category of individual that does not get a golden period, but most people do. The reason for this is that we need to pour some sugar on you, to use some honey, to use something shiny and glistening, to draw you into us and bring you under control. Be under no doubt that the purpose of the golden period is to achieve the prime aims from you, and, dependent upon your status in the fuel matrix, the length of the golden period and its depth varies dependent upon your status and your behaviour. The golden period might just be a one-off act, or more usually, it's a series of behaviours over a course of time. Be under no misunderstanding that the golden period is a period of manipulation. Whether we are buying you flowers, bribing you with gifts, bribing you by taking you to exciting and interesting places, complimenting you about who you are, flattering your appearance, being supportive, being helpful, picking you up and taking you places, looking after you if you fall ill, lending you money, giving you money. All of these are manipulations. This is not somehow a form of part-time narcissism where we are genuine and decent towards you and then it all goes wrong when you are devalued. When we engage in these behaviours that I have just described, you are being manipulated. Lesser and mid-range narcissists think that they are being genuine. They do not realise they are being manipulative. They honestly believe that they are doing these things because they care about you, love you, like you, that they're a decent human being. Greater narcissists and the ultra know that you are being manipulated, and we don't care. We know that we are doing these beneficial things purely to draw you into and under our control, to obtain fuel from you, character traits and residual benefits. We know that it's false flattery. We know that it's bribery. We know that it's false compassion. So understand that the golden period is an illusion created by the narcissist to draw you in. The golden period is that period when all is apparently wonderful between us and our victims. This is the illusion that is created in order to draw you in, to bind you to us, embed you, and then continue to savour the positive fuel that you will pump out in response. It is implemented to gain those character traits from you and to use them elsewhere, to acquire the residual benefits of maybe somewhere to live, borrowing money, possibly gaining access to your connections. Most people recognise that the golden period is relevant with regards to the romantic relationship between the narcissist and the intimate partner primary source. Certainly, this is invariably the most intense, most intoxicating, and the most addictive of the golden periods that exist. But the golden period can apply to all of the appliances that we interact with. So, how does this manifest, and how long are these golden periods? Well, let us begin with the tertiary source. And if you want to understand what tertiary sources are, they are strangers and acquaintances, and go and read my book Fuel, which goes into more detail about all of this for you. There are essentially two types of tertiary source. There is the sporadic tertiary source, the STS, and the frequent tertiary source, the FTS. The sporadic tertiary source is someone that we interact with just the once, or maybe more than once, but not very often at all. There are long periods of non-involvement. So that could be somebody who we get in a lift with, or who occasionally serves us when we go to a particular restaurant every few months. We don't know this person. They do not know us, or they might know about us, and therefore to us this person is a tertiary source. But our engagement with them is benign. We are polite to them. We say please and thank you. And therefore we give them a very brief golden period for the duration of the interaction with them. So if it's somebody we buy a morning newspaper from, say every few months, then for the duration of the purchase, where we're polite and we say please and thank you, we give that person a short golden period, and then we have nothing to do with them for months at an end. The individual smiles at us, positive fuel. They do something helpful for us, positive fuel. They compliment us, positive fuel. Speak to us in an interested way, positive fuel, and so on. And all of this signals that they are under control. In that instance, the interaction may be only for 30 or 60 seconds, but it is still a golden period. It is brief, very brief, but nevertheless, because we've engaged with that person in a benign way and drawn positive fuel from them, they have had a golden period. We may not have charmed them, but we've certainly been pleasant to them. We may have impressed them, engaged with them in a way which has caused them to provide us with positive fuel. This means that they have not suffered in any way, and we have drawn positive fuel from them. The frequent tertiary source is someone we may see several times a week, but they remain a stranger to us. For instance, somebody we go and buy coffee from in the local coffee shop, or a ticket inspector on the train. We engage with this individual repeatedly, and again always do so in pleasant terms, and thus we gain positive fuel from this person who greets us with a smile and compliments our choice of tie or fragrance, but there's no more to the relationship. We see them repeatedly, and this positive engagement means that they have a protracted golden period, albeit the manner of the engagement remains brief, seconds or minutes at most. A golden period for the sporadic tertiary source or frequent tertiary source will be brought to an abrupt end if the individual challenges our control in such a way, or that they wound us, and our narcissism decides that the most appropriate way to assert control over them is by way of the direct assertion of control by some form of provocation and the receipt of negative fuel. So, for instance, we might triangulate the individual with someone who is a higher rank source, who we wish to impress or appear authoritative in front of. So, it might be that a waiter has caused a problem for us by delivering the food late, which means that we are wounded, and therefore, whereas ordinarily we might continue a golden period by saying, oh, it's okay, no problem, and we accept their apology, we might upbraid them for it in order to triangulate that malign behaviour with the observing non-intimate secondary sources, say a group of friends. It is the tertiary source that is, of most appliances, that is going to possibly receive no golden period at all. This is where we might just berate a stranger from the off. There's no charm, there's no pleasantry, there's no decency shown towards them. For instance, we might bark an order at a ticket inspector. We might demand entry to a concierge. We've never dealt with them before, and our immediate interaction with them is malign and unpleasant, and therefore they have no golden period. Our narcissism determines that in order to achieve what we want, the most appropriate way is to behave in a hostile, aggressive, unpleasant manner towards the relevant individual. What about secondary sources? There are those who are non-intimate secondary sources, friends, family, and colleagues, and then there are the intimate partner secondary sources, somebody that we are seducing who is potentially going to become the intimate partner primary source, somebody who's a mistress, somebody who's a booty call, or a friend with benefits, somebody we pick up and down and behave with in a shelf manner, or a dirty little secret. The individuals who are non-intimate secondary sources invariably have golden periods, unless they're a scapegoat, and those golden periods last for a long time. So friends, colleagues, family members are always treated in a benign way, and this lasts for a long period of time. This is because we exhibit our attractive qualities. We charm, we are polite, good-natured, interesting, and so on. Not only in order to attract this person to us, but as part of the facade, because that non-intimate secondary source plays a crucial role in the maintenance of our facade. And therefore, the golden period for a non-intimate secondary source lasts for a long time because either they're an important part of the facade, so our narcissism says, in effect, don't treat them badly because that'll damage the facade, and also because the non-intimate secondary source is less likely to become problematic for us because we only engage with them on an intermittent basis. So, for instance, because we only see them every so often, their fuel does not become stale, therefore no need to devalue them, and or they are far less likely to do something which threatens our control. And even if we do, or rather even if they do, the threat to the control is dealt with in a benign way because of the need of the facade. So for instance, let us say we meet up with a group of friends and one of the friends says that we're wrong about something, perhaps some historical fact. This is challenge fuel and is threatening our sense of control over that other individual and potentially undermining us in front of the other friends. Some narcissists might lash out and say, you've got it completely wrong, what do you know about history? And be shirty with them. A lesser, more likely to do that because lessers don't operate facades. But a mid-range narcissist, essentially the narcissism says, you can't use malign manipulations at this juncture because we have to preserve the facade. And instead, the narcissists say, I think you'll find you're wrong about that, John. Actually, this is what happened. And they are corrected. Or even, oh, I hadn't realised that, John. Thank you for explaining that. Always good to get extra knowledge. And then turn the conversation to talking about something else and asserting control that way. There, the narcissism decided that the preservation of the facade was so important and control could be asserted over John so as to not affect the facade, so the two things were achieved. John was controlled, facade was maintained, the other listeners were controlled. However, it is important to understand that ultimately control and fuel come ahead of the facade. The facade is a residual benefit, and therefore, in certain instances, the facade can crumble in order to assert control. And that is when the narcissist suddenly slaps his wife in front of people at a dinner party, or the friend that suddenly goes, fuck you, and flounces at a social gathering. The facade is damaged because the need for control and fuel was greater. But invariably, most non-intimate secondary sources, unless someone is in a scapegoat position, and that is dealt with in separate video, most non-intimate secondary sources find themselves in a position of having golden periods, being treated well. They are not deep golden periods in the sense that we're not always buying friends flowers and gifts and taking them to places, but they will be afforded some of our largesse from time to time. But generally speaking, the golden period for them is that we are friendly towards them, feign an interest in what they are doing in their lives, that we're civil towards them, that we ask how they are, and dependent on the school of narcissist, perhaps even go so far as to feign compassion for them. Middle ranger type A, for instance, asking, how are you dealing with the loss of your father? Is there anything I can do to help? Even turning up with a chicken soup when that individual is ill. All part of the maintenance of facade and controlling that individual by the continuing application of an ongoing golden period. Accordingly, we may see a friend once a week or once a month, and therefore there is no extensive reliance in terms of frequency and quantity of fuel from this person, which would then threaten the potency. We may meet for an hour for a coffee or an evening out together, and we draw positive fuel whilst asserting control from them. Unless they challenge us in some form by wounding or challenge fuel or halt the fuel provision, this golden period will continue unabated. We will not suddenly find their fuel stale, as happens with the intimate partner primary source, and therefore the golden period lasts. What about intimate partner secondary sources? Well, for them, the golden period is similarly extensive and tends to be improved upon in terms of quality and depth compared to a non-intimate secondary source. There are 3 types of intimate partner secondary source. The candidate intimate partner secondary source. This is someone who is on track to become the intimate partner primary source. They are on the trajectory towards being crowned. The shelf intimate partner secondary source. This person is not an immediate candidate for becoming the IPPS, but that could change in the future. But they are used for fuel on an intermittent basis. For example, whilst the intimate partner primary source is in devaluation, we will spend time with the shelf IPSS, even though they are not going to be the new IPPS. But they still, of course, remain of use to us in terms of the need to control them, gain fuel, character traits and residual benefits. And indeed, they could be utilised for the purpose of triangulation with the IPPS or indeed other IPSSs. The third category of intimate partner secondary source is the dirty little secret, the DLS. If the person is a clear prospect for IPPS, then this candidate experiences the full effect of the illusory seduction as they are drawn into our world and treated like a king or queen. The various benign seductive manipulations will be deployed to create this magical wonderland where the most perfect love resides. This is intoxicating. This is a whirlwind seduction, and this is where the love bombing comes from. We will look to monopolise your time, praising you, complimenting you, flattering you, wanting to spend time with you, wanting to talk to you for hours on the telephone, being interesting, charming, humorous. We will be helpful. We will buy you things, take you places, be civil and charming to your friends, appear as the perfect catch. Once this candidate IPSS is embedded as the intimate partner primary source, the golden period will then continue. Now, sometimes the candidate IPSS doesn't secure the promotion, but that doesn't mean that that person will be devalued. All it means is they are transferred to being a shelf IPSS. Their fuel remains pretty potent, but they're not quite right. It might be that they have not come under control to the extent that the narcissist needs, or they're being outgunned by a competing IPSS. This, of course, this position of being placed as the IPSS may change, so they could return to being the candidate in the future, or they may not, and they just remain a shelf IPSS for a long time, picked up and put down when we decide. Accordingly, if the IPSS accepts this role, they will invariably have a long golden period. They will have occasionally corrective devaluations, but these are like slaps on the wrist, and for the most part, the shelf IPSS is treated well. We spend time with them, we compliment, we flatter, we provide great sex. There will be occasional gifts. There will be periods, of course, where you're placed on the shelf, and many people mistake being placed on the shelf as a form of devaluation, and that you're being devalued when you don't hear from us, but that is not the case. And I will be explaining in additional work the distinction in that regard. But in essence, a shelf IPSS is largely treated well, and occasionally, if you are out of line, for example, demanding to see the narcissist and putting pressure on him, thus challenging him, you might be given a silent treatment, or you might be told, you're being too needy, I need space, and you are insulted in some way. So you'll get a corrective devaluation, but it doesn't last for long. It is not the sustained devaluation that the IPPS suffers. So, the shelf IPSS usually has an elongated golden period with occasional devaluations linked to your behaviour and being placed on the shelf, but you will remain in the golden period nevertheless. With the dirty little secret, it is similar to the experience of the shelf IPSS, albeit the engagement is within a more narrow and confined basis. You're kept away from the rest of our world. So it's an hour in the evening or the occasional afternoon, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, maybe once a week. The time is not long together, but there may be a greater frequency than that of the shelf IPSS. And with the dirty little secret, again, you will largely be treated well. So in the periods of time that you're with the narcissist, you'll be flattered, you'll be complimented, there'll be good sex provided, there'll be interesting conversations, you'll be taken out for dinner, but then you're put away back in that box, popped on the shelf until the next time. With all 3 of the intimate partner secondary sources, they experience significant golden periods. The candidate IPSS has an intense golden period, which may be for a number of weeks before they then become the IPPS, and then the golden period for that appliance becomes applicable. A shelf IPSS, assuming they don't escape or are disengaged from, can have a golden period with occasional intermittent corrective devaluations which lasts for years and years. Similar for the dirty little secret IPSS also. The golden periods for the shelf and dirty little secret IPSS is not as intense as that for the candidate, nor as intense as the IPPS, which I shall be coming to shortly, but it remains wholly addictive. The victim is treated well, future faked a lot, given comfort crumbs, taken places, confided in, bought gifts and so forth. Remember, all of these are manipulations. I'll leave the wife, we'll be together eventually, I want to marry you next year, I want us to move in together. All of this, of course, being said by the narcissist to manipulate you. And if you want to understand more about future faking and how that operates, listen to that video, please. The narcissist effectively recognizes the value of these types of IPSSs and wants to maintain control over you. Remember, lesser and mid-range narcissists don't realize they're controlling you, greaters and the ultra do. If the IPSS challenges the narcissist, for instance, saying that you want to spend more time with the narcissist, or, for instance, threatening to expose your affair to the narcissist's intimate partner primary source, the narcissist will invariably devalue you, but does so in order to bring that person in line. If you respond, then the golden period is restored immediately. If not, you'll be given another corrective devaluation, and then maybe another. If you still don't come into line, you'll be given a disengagement devaluation, and then disengaged from. And the narcissist will then turn to a different IPPS or go and find one. Understand that disengagement of an IPSS is unusual, and you're more likely to be placed on the shelf. Finally, we deal with the primary source. The golden period for the intimate partner primary source is the one that most people are familiar with. The golden period for the IPPS, in effect, has 2 sections to it. It commences when they are the candidate IPSS, while they're being seduced, and then it continues once they have been embedded as the IPPS, and they enjoy the fruits of the narcissist's largesse. The golden period for the IPPS is the one which creates these apparent, truly magical connections, the dizzying delight, the wondrous magnificence, which feeds into the addiction that you have for the narcissist. The golden period for the intimate partner primary source will last from months to years, dependent upon how long your positive fuel remains potent and fresh, how long it's provided frequently and supplied in the desired quantities. It is unusual for the primary source to do anything which challenges the narcissist's control to such an extent that they are disengaged from during the golden period. What causes the golden period to end is not disengagement, but is the shift to devaluation. And that shift to devaluation occurs as a consequence of the primary source's fuel becoming stale, or not being provided frequently enough, and or in not large enough amounts. But the intimate partner primary source will always be devalued. The illusion that is the golden period will always end, and there is nothing you can do to keep it going. The golden period for the intimate partner primary source will last from months to years. A typical golden period will be in the region of 6 to 24 months, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. And that's dependent upon the quality of the primary source and the nature of the narcissist and what else is going on in the fuel matrix. If you want to understand more about why the golden period can last for a shorter period of time, I'll be addressing that in a separate video. The golden period for the primary source ends because, in our world, you as the appliance fails us. This is because you have reduced the potency by becoming stale. So even if you give so much love, so much sex, so much appreciation, so much admiration, so much support and so much help, eventually we grow bored of it, and all of that positive fuel becomes stale, and you will be devalued. Or, if you happen to ration that, and that is not done by design, but it might be by virtue of jobs keeping you and the narcissist apart, travel, etc., the fact that you're not providing it frequently enough and or in such large amounts also results in devaluation. Fuel is extremely potent when supplied by the primary source. And when it becomes stale, devaluation will occur. Devaluation must commence by way of altering the fuel provided and in effect punishing you as the malfunctioning IPPS. Accordingly, we change things by devaluing you to extract negative fuel, which then feels fresh and potent to us compared to the stale positive fuel. We do not get rid of you. And I will explain in a different video why it is we just don't get rid of you at the point it becomes stale or infrequent or not large enough. In essence, to do so would be contrary to our interests. We have to have a replacement. This determination with regard to staleness, frequency and amount is entirely down to the perception of the narcissist, and there's nothing you can do about it. Devaluation always occurs with the intimate partner primary source because this period is who we rely on the most for the prime aims: fuel, control, character traits and residual benefits, and thus you become the most important supplier of all of those things. Because you are the most important supplier, we end up engaging with you frequently. We live with you nearly most of the time. We certainly see you almost every day, talk every day, do much together so we can draw on all of this magnificent positive fuel, draw on the character traits, obtain the residual benefits from you. The fuel is extremely potent to us and of critical consequence. However, this repeated and sustained reliance means that the risk of it becoming stale is very high indeed, and therefore devaluation will follow. Unlike an NISS or IPSS, where devaluation is not a foregone conclusion, because there, the lower demand placed upon those appliances, i.e. we don't see them as often, means that it is unlikely that their fuel becomes stale. It's worth pointing out that some people who are the intimate partner primary source do not experience the wildness, the passion, the fireworks, the apparent magic of the golden period, and instead they get what is known as the bronze period. This is when the narcissist, and this is usually applicable to lower lesser, middle lesser, or lower mid-range, does not treat them especially magnificently, but what they do is they are generally okay with them. So they don't behave in a way which is going to cause the newly targeted victim to retreat. The golden period and the bronze period both serve the function of keeping devaluing behaviours at bay by the illusion of us being kind and decent and loving and interesting and fun and humorous. They're all manipulations designed to draw you in. The full horror is kept from you. The golden period occurs to bind you to us. It plays into your addiction to us. Your emotional thinking goes off the charts because of your frequent interaction with us, so everything is seen through those rose-tinted spectacles. It creates also a place which feels so wonderful to you because of A, the way that we treat you, and B, the way that your emotional thinking responds to, that you repeatedly strive to return to it. And of course, during the devaluation period, we can give you respite periods, which is the reimposition of the golden period. What then happens is, when you're in devaluation, you strive to get back to the golden period. You have experienced it once. Surely you can get it back. And so not only does the golden period serve a function of drawing you in the first place, it also keeps you invested even when we are treating you terribly. Because, not knowing that you're dealing with a narcissist and or affected by emotional thinking, you fall prey to the fact that if it was wonderful once, it can be wonderful again. What you don't realize is you were given an illusion. The appearance of this illusion drew you in the first place, and then it keeps you in place because you think, mistakenly, that you can get it back somehow. And this mistake is compounded by the fact that we will grant it to you through a respite period. And thus you end up thinking, oh good, we're back on track again. See, it can be done. And it's not because of anything that you have done. It's because we chose to implement it to control you again through a benign method. And then you'll be plunged into the devaluation again. The golden period for all appliances is an artifice which is designed to enable us to secure our prime aims, chief of which is control and fuel. Whether this illusion is used for 30 seconds or for several years, remember, it is still that. It is an illusion, and it is a manipulation. Thank you for listening.